3 words, Eagles fans. J. Brown spoke. And what he said just might change the entire conversation around this franchise. Because after weeks of silence, frustration, and wild speculation, the truth finally came out. Before we dive into it, do me one favor, smash that like button, share this with another Eagles fan, and subscribe so you never miss what's really happening with this team. It's Super Bowl Sunday. The rest of the league is either celebrating confetti or cleaning out lockers. But in Philadelphia, the spotlight isn't on New England or Seattle. It's on the Birds. It's on A.J. Brown. It's on Jalen Hurts. And it's on whether this locker room is truly united heading into a massive off-season. Let's start with the headline that's been driving talk shows and timelines crazy. A.J. Brown is not on the trade block. Despite the noise. Despite the speculation. Despite the fact that he didn't speak to reporters after that painful wild card loss to the 49ers. Despite skipping media during locker clean-out day. Despite national media trying to spin this into a feud or fallout, there have been no meaningful trade talks involving A.J. Brown. That is not a small detail. That's the detail. Because if the Eagles were actually preparing to move on from one of the best wide receivers in football, don't you think Super Bowl week, when every executive, coach, and agent in the NFL is gathered in one place, would have been the perfect time for Howie Roseman to quietly explore options? That's how business gets done in this league. But it didn't happen. Only minimal contact. Nothing advanced. Nothing serious. And that's a powerful sign that the front office is not treating A.J. Brown like a player they're ready to move. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. During Super Bowl week, A.J. Brown appeared on Micah Parsons' podcast. And instead of tension, instead of bitterness, instead of awkward answers, we saw something different. He looked calm. Focused. Centered. He said Philadelphia is home. Home. That word matters. That word isn't accidental. Players who want out don't use language like that. He talked about being excited for new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion. He acknowledged that change can be good. He expressed appreciation for the direction moving forward. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't look like a player carrying frustration. He looked like a leader resetting for what's next. So let me ask you something early on here. Did we let the silence create a story that wasn't fully there? Because silence in today's NFL gets filled quickly. And it usually gets filled with the loudest narrative possible. Now let's be clear. Around the league, people were absolutely discussing the situation. Executives were curious. Teams would have lined up instantly if A.J. Brown became available. That's just reality when you're talking about a top-tier receiver in his prime. But being discussed and being available are two completely different things. Right now, he's not asking out. The team isn't shopping him. And both sides appear to be in a better mental place than they were at season's end. And that brings us to Jalen Hurts. According to multiple reports, including insights from those around him at the Pro Bowl, Jalen is in one of the best mental spaces he's been in for a while. Teammates noticed it. Observers noticed it. There's a sense that he's refreshed, recalibrated, and ready to attack what's next. So if A.J. Brown is good, and Jalen Hurts is good, then what exactly went wrong last season? Was it chemistry between stars? Or was it structure within the offense? A lot of signs suggest that last year's offensive direction simply stalled. Not because of effort. Not because of talent. But because sometimes systems plateau. Sometimes messaging loses impact. Sometimes play-calling rhythm doesn't maximize strengths. Kevin Patullo is respected inside that building. That hasn't changed. But being respected and being the right fit as offensive coordinator are two separate conversations. Enter Sean Mannion. This is where the franchise is clearly signaling change. Mannion brings a Shanahan McVay-style influence, motion, layered route concepts, defined reads, a structured run game identity. It's modern. It's quarterback friendly when executed properly. But it also demands discipline and timing. Greg Cosell, who has studied this game at the highest level for decades, emphasized that infusion of new ideas can be healthy. He pointed out that this team has still been wildly successful, 2 Super Bowl appearances in 4 seasons, and that you don't overhaul things unless you believe the core can handle evolution. But he also made it clear there will be a learning curve. New terminology, new practice structure, new sequencing. Jalen Hurts will have to adapt. The offensive line may need to shift in profile to fit zone concepts more consistently. And that brings up another layer. The offensive line could look different moving forward. Lane Johnson is still elite, but he's not 25 anymore. Landon Dickerson's injury history can't be ignored. Cam Jurgens had an up-and-down year. Jeff Stoutland stepping away after more than a decade is significant. That's institutional knowledge walking out the door. But again, if you're committing to a scheme shift, sometimes the staff alignment has to follow. On defense, Vic Fangio decided to return after serious consideration about stepping away. That's stability. That's leadership. And that continuity matters when the offense is undergoing transformation. So here's the bigger picture. This isn't a team imploding. This isn't a locker room at war. This is a contender recalibrating after a disappointing finish. And here's the question of the day. Do you believe this offensive reset will unlock a more efficient version of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, or are you worried this change could create more growing pains? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear where you stand. Because the stakes are high. When you have a top-tier quarterback, a dominant wide receiver, a front office known for aggression, a defense anchored by experienced leadership, you're not rebuilding, you're refining. And don't forget the human side of this league. Christian Ellis, a former Eagle now starting in New England, talked about how being cut actually refined him. How adversity sharpened him. That's what this league does. It exposes flaws and forces growth. Maybe that's exactly what this offseason is doing for the Eagles. A.J. Brown reset emotionally. Jalen Hurts reset mentally. The coaching staff reset strategically. Sometimes you don't need fireworks. You need clarity. And clarity is what we're starting to see. Because if A.J. Brown truly views Philadelphia as home, if Jalen Hurts embraces the structure of a modernized system, if the offensive adjustments create balance instead of frustration, then this conversation about dysfunction might age very poorly. The NFC is wide open every year. Windows don't stay open forever, but this one isn't closed. The Eagles still have elite talent. They still have a front office willing to be bold. They still have a quarterback who has played on the biggest stage. So instead of asking whether this team is falling apart, maybe the better question is this: are we about to witness the next evolution of the Philadelphia Eagles? Because if this reset hits the way it's designed to, the rest of the conference might look back at this drama off-season as the moment everything quietly came back together. And that's the part nobody outside of Philadelphia wants to admit.